Welcome to my channel. If you love heartfelt stories that carry deep meaning, please subscribe and stay with us. Your support keeps these stories alive. The night Emma received the message, she almost ignored it. It was late, around 9:30, and she was finishing up the dishes when her phone buzzed. It was a name she hadn't heard in nearly 10 years. Daniel Carter, her husband, Michael's old college friend. For a moment, she froze. Memories flickered through her mind. Daniel's laugh, his easy charm, how close he and Michael had once been. Back then, Daniel had been a constant presence in their lives. Then suddenly he disappeared. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. Now, out of nowhere, he had written, "Hey Emma, it's Daniel. I'm in town. I'd love to catch up with you both if that's okay." Emma hesitated before showing the message to Michael. He stared at it quietly, his expression unreadable. "He's back?" Michael finally said, almost to himself. "After all these years?" Emma nodded. "Do you want to see him?" Michael took a long breath. "Yeah, maybe it's time." 2 days later, Daniel came by their house. When Emma opened the door, she almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, a little tired around the eyes. But that same smile, warm and confident, was still there. "Emma," he said softly, "you haven't changed a bit." She laughed, embarrassed. "That's a lie and you know it. Come in." When Michael walked into the room, there was a long silence. Then, without warning, Daniel stepped forward and pulled him into a hug. For a moment, it felt like the years had melted away. They spent the evening reminiscing. Old stories, forgotten jokes, the kind of laughter that made the air feel lighter. Emma watched them smiling. It was nice to see her husband laughing again. Michael had been distant lately, buried in work, tired all the time. But tonight she saw a glimpse of the man she fell in love with. After Daniel left, Emma turned to Michael. "It was good seeing him again, wasn't it?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah, it was." But something in his tone made her pause. Over the next week, Daniel started visiting often. Sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to drop by. He brought flowers, helped fix a broken fence, even played with their dog. Emma couldn't deny it. He was easy to be around. Kind, funny, and thoughtful. But she noticed small things too. The way he sometimes looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way his voice softened when he said her name. One afternoon, while Michael was still at work, Daniel stopped by unexpectedly. "I was driving by," he said, smiling. "Thought I'd check if you needed help with that garden you mentioned." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, I could use a hand." As they worked, they talked. About the past, about life, about how fast time moved. When she mentioned how hard Michael had been working lately, Daniel grew quiet. "He's always been like that," he said softly. "All or nothing," she smiled faintly. "That's true." Then Daniel looked at her. "And what about you, Emma? Are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. Yes," she said quickly, brushing dirt off her hands. "Of course I am." Daniel studied her for a moment, then smiled. "Good. You deserve to be." His tone was gentle, but something in his eyes made her heart race. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way Daniel had looked at her, like he saw something she didn't want anyone to see. When Michael came to bed, she turned to him. "You and Daniel, were you too close?" Michael sighed, staring at the ceiling. "We were. He was like a brother to me once." "What happened between you two?" There was a long pause before Michael said, "It's complicated." Emma wanted to ask more, but his tone told her not to. The next evening, Daniel texted again. "Can we talk, just us? There's something I think you should know." Emma read the message 3 times, her heart pounding. Something he should know? About what? About Michael? About their past? Her finger hovered over the reply button. Finally, she typed one word. "Okay." She didn't tell Michael, and as she slipped her phone under the pillow that night, she had no idea that message would change everything she thought she knew about her marriage and about Daniel. Emma met Daniel the next afternoon at a small cafe near the lake, quiet, almost empty. The autumn sun cast a golden glow over the water, and the soft rustle of leaves filled the air. When she arrived, Daniel was already there, waiting with 2 cups of coffee. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said, smiling faintly. "I almost didn't," Emma admitted. "What's this about, Daniel?" He studied her face for a moment, then sighed. "I didn't come back here just to visit old friends, Emma. I came because of something that happened years ago, something involving Michael." Emma's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated. "Back in college, before he married you, Michael and I started a small business together. It wasn't much, just a project we thought could grow. But when things went wrong, I took the blame for something I didn't do. It cost me everything," Emma blinked. "Michael wouldn't do that." "I didn't think he would either," Daniel said quietly. "But I had proof, and I kept it to myself all these years. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted answers," Emma's heart pounded. "Daniel, I don't know what you're saying. I'm saying," he interrupted gently, "that your husband built his success on something that wasn't entirely his. And I think deep down, he knows it." For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. The cafe seemed to fade around her, replaced by a rushing sound in her ears. "Why tell me this now?" she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft but steady. "Because I've watched from a distance. I've seen how hard you've both worked for what you have. I needed you to know the truth before I decided what to do next." That night, Emma was quiet during dinner. Michael noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked, setting down his fork. She forced a smile. "Just tired." He reached for her hand. "You've been working too hard. Maybe we should take a weekend off somewhere." "Just us." The tenderness in his voice made her chest tighten. Could Daniel be wrong? Could there be another explanation? As she cleaned up later, she saw Michael's phone light up on the counter. A message flashed briefly before the screen dimmed again. She hadn't meant to look, but one word caught her attention. "Daniel." Her hands froze mid-wipe. She didn't mention it that night. But after Michael fell asleep, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the glow of the streetlight flickering through the curtains. Daniel's words replayed in her mind. He built his success on something that wasn't his, and now Michael was talking to him? The next morning, while Michael was in the shower, she checked his messages. She didn't want to, but curiosity and fear pushed her forward. The text read, "We need to talk. Not here, you know where." That was it. No greeting. No details. Her hands trembled as she put the phone down. What could that mean? Later that day, Emma decided to follow him. Michael left home around 6 in the evening, saying he had a late client meeting. She waited a few minutes, then grabbed her coat and keys. The drive took nearly 20 minutes. She followed his car through winding roads until he pulled into an old park, one they used to visit when they were younger. From her car, she watched as another figure approached. Daniel. The 2 men stood face to face near the benches. Their voices were too low to hear, but their body language said enough. Daniel looked calm, almost sorrowful. Michael looked tense, his hands moving sharply as he spoke. At one point, he turned away, pacing, then ran a hand through his hair. Finally, Daniel reached into his pocket and handed Michael something, a small envelope. Michael stared at it for a long time before taking it. Then Daniel turned and walked away. Emma sat frozen. Her mind swirled with questions. What was in that envelope? Why had her husband looked so afraid? When Michael came home later, she pretended to be asleep. But she could feel him sit at the edge of the bed, his breathing heavy, as though the weight of something pressed against him. She wanted to ask, to demand the truth, but she stayed silent. In the morning, she found the envelope tucked in his briefcase. She didn't open it. Not yet. Something inside her hesitated. A voice whispered that once she did, everything might change forever. But by evening, curiosity won. Inside the envelope were several faded papers, old business contracts, and a handwritten note from Daniel. The note read, "I kept my silence because I thought you'd do the right thing. I was wrong. Now Emma deserves to know the truth. Emma's heart dropped. Her hands shook as she turned the last page and froze. There, in black ink, was Michael's signature on a contract transferring all ownership of a joint project from Daniel Carter and Michael Hayes to Michael Hayes, dated just 1 week before Daniel vanished from their lives. That night, when Michael walked through the door, she was waiting for him in the living room. "Where were you?" she asked softly. He looked startled. "Work, why?" She held up the papers. "Don't lie to me," his face drained of color. "Emma, where did you get that?" "I found it. In your briefcase." He didn't answer. For a long time, they just stared at each other. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered. "Tell me you didn't do this to him." Michael looked away, his jaw tight. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" He ran a hand through his hair, his voice low. "You don't understand, Emma. I had no choice. It was either him or everything I'd worked for." Her throat tightened. "You mean everything we worked for?" Michael turned away, his shoulders tense. "I did it for us." She wanted to believe him. But the truth was there, in ink and paper, impossible to erase. And as he walked upstairs without another word, she realized something had shifted between them. Something that might never return. The next morning, Emma received another message from Daniel. "I'm sorry, Emma, I didn't mean to hurt you. But there's more you should know about that deal, and about what really happened to me after I left." Emma stared at the message, her hands trembling. "There was more?" She typed back, "What do you mean? What happened to you?" The reply came seconds later. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you everything." Emma couldn't shake the unease that clung to her all night. She lay in bed next to Michael, pretending to sleep, listening to his slow, steady breathing. But her mind was wide awake, buzzing with Daniel's message. "There's more you should know." What more could there be? The papers she found already revealed something unforgivable. Still, Daniel's words echoed with a strange kind of sorrow, not revenge. That made it harder to ignore. By morning, she had made up her mind. She had to meet him. The next day, she drove to the address Daniel sent. A quiet spot by an old bridge outside town. The air smelled faintly of pine and damp leaves. She parked and saw Daniel waiting by the railing, looking out over the water. When he turned, there was no bitterness in his face. "Only weariness. I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. Emma crossed her arms. "You said you had more to tell me." "I'm here," Daniel nodded. "I owe you the truth." "All of it." He took a deep breath. "After that deal went bad, I didn't just lose the business. I lost everything. My reputation, my savings, my home. People thought I had stolen from the company. The documents made it look like I'd signed over my share voluntarily. But I didn't," Emma's heart pounded. "You're saying Michael forged it?" Daniel looked away. "I can't prove it anymore." "But yes, that's what I believe," she swallowed hard. "Then why come back now? Why tell me?" "Because I saw you," he said softly. "A few months ago in a magazine article. Your husband was featured for his company's success. There was a picture of you two, smiling, perfect. And I realized I couldn't carry the lie any longer. Not when it involved you." Emma blinked. "Me?" He hesitated. "You were the one person who was kind to me back then. You believed in me. I thought you deserved to know what really happened." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind rustled the trees, scattering yellow leaves into the water below. Finally, Emma said quietly, "You didn't just come back for the truth, did you?" Daniel's eyes met hers, steady, sad, and full of something she couldn't name. "No," he admitted. "I came back because I wanted to see you again. To see if the years had changed you. But they haven't, Emma. You're still—" He stopped himself. "Still the same person I remember." She took a small step back. "Daniel, please don't." He nodded. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just needed you to know." Emma looked down, her emotions tangled. Hurt, confusion, disbelief. "You shouldn't have kept this to yourself for so long." "You're right," he said quietly. "And neither should he." That evening, Emma came home to find Michael sitting at the dining table, his head in his hands. Papers were scattered in front of him. When he looked up, she saw something in his eyes. Guilt. "Emma," he said, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk." She crossed her arms. "Go ahead. I know you met Daniel," he said. "He told me." Her stomach twisted. "So what now? You going to lie again?" He shook his head. "No, I'm done lying." Michael stood and walked toward the window. "What I did was wrong. Back then I was desperate. My father's business had just failed, and we were drowning in debt. Daniel came up with an idea, but I was the one with the funding and investors. When things went bad, I panicked. I transferred everything to my name so the investors wouldn't pull out. I thought I could fix it, rebuild it, and give him his share later." Emma's voice trembled. "But you never did," he nodded. "I tried to reach him, but he was gone. Moved away. I told myself he didn't want anything to do with me." "Michael," she whispered, tears rising, "you let him take the fall for something you did." "I know." His voice cracked, and it's haunted me every day since. For a long time, Emma just stared at him. She wanted to believe he'd done it for survival. But Daniel had lost years of his life because of that decision. "You should tell the truth," she said finally. "Publicly," Michael's head snapped up. "Do you know what that would do to us? To you? Everything we built, gone." Emma shook her head slowly. "No, everything he built." He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Instead, he sank back into his chair, covering his face. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered. Later that night, Emma stood alone in the backyard, staring at the stars. The air was cold, the silence heavy. She heard footsteps behind her. Michael's. "I can't lose you, Emma," he said softly. Not over something that happened a lifetime ago. She turned to him, tears glistening in her eyes. "You already lost me the moment you decided your ambition mattered more than honesty." He flinched at her words, but said nothing. The next morning, Emma received another text, this time not from Daniel, but from an unknown number. "Mrs. Hayes, this is regarding Mr. Daniel Carter. Please call us as soon as possible." Her pulse quickened. She called the number immediately. A calm voice answered. "Ma'am, this is Officer Grant with the city police. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." Her heart nearly stopped. "What happened?" "There was a car accident early this morning on the old highway. The driver's ID matched Daniel Carter." Emma's knees buckled. She grabbed the counter to steady herself. "Is he—" "I'm sorry," the officer said gently. "He didn't make it." Hours passed in a blur. Emma barely remembered calling Michael, barely remembered his stunned silence when she told him. When she finally sat down, her hands were shaking so badly she could hardly hold her phone. She opened Daniel's last message again, the one from the night before. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you everything." Her eyes filled with tears. What had he wanted to tell her? Was it about the business, or something else entirely? And why did it feel like his death wasn't just a coincidence? Late that evening, she received another envelope. No return address, just her name, written neatly in black ink. Inside was a short letter in Daniel's handwriting. "Emma, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to tell you in person. I've forgiven Michael, but there's something you still don't know, something I uncovered recently that explains why he did what he did. It's not what you think. The truth is deeper, and it involves someone you trust. Please find the folder I left with Mr. Langley. He'll explain everything." Emma froze. Mr. Langley, that was Michael's old business attorney. Her heart pounded as realization hit. Daniel's return wasn't just about the past. It was about something happening now. The next morning dawned gray and quiet, the kind of day that felt heavy before it even began. Emma barely slept. Daniel's letter haunted her. "Find the folder I left with Mr. Langley. He'll explain everything." Every word echoed in her mind. She had to know the truth, whatever it was. By mid-morning, she was sitting in the waiting room of Langley & Associates, a small firm Michael had worked with years ago. The receptionist recognized her instantly. "Mrs. Hayes," she said gently. Mr. Langley will see you now. Emma followed her down a quiet hallway to an office filled with old books and the faint smell of coffee. Thomas Langley, a silver-haired man in his late 60s, stood up as she entered. "Emma, I was expecting you," she blinked. "Expecting me?" He nodded slowly. "Daniel said you might come. He gave me something to hold for you. Said it would make sense when the time was right." Langley opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed folder, thick with papers. He hesitated before handing it to her. "I should warn you," he said softly. "What's in there might change the way you see everything." Emma's stomach turned. "What do you mean?" Langley sighed. "I've known Michael for many years. I also knew Daniel. What happened between them was complicated. But there were other forces involved, people neither of them understood back then." She frowned. "Other people?" "Yes," Langley said. "Investors. The kind who make things happen and disappear when things go wrong." Michael wasn't entirely to blame for what happened to Daniel. Someone else orchestrated the deal that caused the fallout. Emma stared at him. "Who?" Langley's expression darkened. "Michael's father." Emma's heart dropped. "His father?" she whispered. "But he passed away years ago." Langley nodded. "He did, but before he died, he was deeply in debt. He made a deal behind Michael's back to save the family's assets. He used Daniel and Michael's project as collateral. When the deal fell apart, the only way to protect the Hayes name was to shift ownership and make it look like Daniel was responsible for the losses." Emma's throat went dry. "So Michael didn't forge those papers?" Langley hesitated. "No, his father did. But Michael found out later, after Daniel had already left. And instead of coming clean, he chose silence. He thought protecting the family was more important than telling the truth." She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "Oh my God." Langley leaned back, his eyes kind but heavy. "Daniel discovered this recently. He came back not for revenge, but to clear both their names. He wanted you to know Michael wasn't the villain you thought he was. But he also wanted Michael to face what he'd hidden for so long." When Emma left the office, the world felt different, quieter, heavier, sadder. She drove home in silence, Daniel's words echoing in her head. "It's not what you think. The truth is deeper, and it involves someone you trust." Now she understood. Michael's silence had destroyed Daniel's life, and their marriage's foundation. But it wasn't born from cruelty. It was born from shame. Still, the truth didn't erase the pain. When she walked into the house, Michael was sitting on the couch, staring at Daniel's photo in the newspaper. The headline read, "Local entrepreneur dies in tragic car crash." He looked up when she entered, his eyes red. "You went to see Langley." Emma didn't deny it. "I did." He nodded slowly. "Then you know." "I know your father did it," she said softly. "But you let Daniel take the blame. You could have told the truth years ago." Michael's voice broke. "I was afraid, Emma. Afraid that if people found out, it would destroy everything. My company. Our future. You." Tears filled her eyes. "You destroyed those things anyway, Michael. Just slower." He lowered his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know." For the first time, Emma saw not the confident man who built a business, but the frightened young man who'd carried a secret too heavy for too long. "I can't change the past," he said. "But I can fix what's left. I've already called the board." "I'm stepping down." Emma's breath caught. "You're resigning?" He nodded. "It's time the truth came out. Daniel deserves that much." She looked at him, unsure whether to feel relief or sorrow. "And what about us?" Michael's eyes met hers, soft, broken, searching. "I don't know," he admitted. "That depends on whether you can ever forgive me." That night, Emma sat alone on the porch, staring into the darkness. The rain had started to fall lightly, tapping against the railing in a slow rhythm. She thought of Daniel, his smile, his kindness, the weight he carried even after so many years. He had spent a decade living with the pain of betrayal, only to return seeking peace. And now he was gone. She whispered into the night, "You were right, Daniel. The truth does change everything." For a long time, she sat there, tears sliding down her face. Then she saw something, a small box on the porch table she hadn't noticed before. It was wrapped in brown paper with a simple note attached. For Emma. From Daniel. Her hands shook as she unwrapped it. Inside was a small wooden music box, carved with delicate flowers. When she opened it, a soft tune filled the air, the same lullaby she used to hum when she and Michael first moved into their house. Inside the lid, an engraving read, "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's freeing yourself to live again." Emma's tears fell freely now. Daniel had left her a message, not of pain, but of peace. The next morning, Michael came to her quietly as she stood by the window. "I'm going to Daniel's service today," he said. "I don't expect you to come, but I wanted to tell you." She turned to him, her voice soft. "I'll come." They drove in silence to the small chapel by the lake. The service was simple, filled with quiet music and kind words. As the pastor spoke about forgiveness and redemption, Emma reached for Michael's hand. He looked at her, eyes wet with regret, and she squeezed gently. Not in reconciliation, at least not yet, but in shared sorrow. When they left, the wind carried the last notes of the hymn across the lake. It felt like a goodbye, but also, maybe, a beginning. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma opened her journal and began to write. Not about the lies or the pain, but about the courage it took to tell the truth, and the people who carried it even when it hurt the most. She ended with a single line. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go and still wishing them peace. She closed the book and looked toward the fading sky, where the last light shimmered across the water, soft, forgiving, eternal. The weeks after Daniel's funeral passed in slow motion. The air in the house felt heavier, quieter. Even the mornings, once filled with the hum of coffee and conversation, had turned into long silences and half-finished sentences. Emma moved through the days like a ghost of herself. Grieving Daniel felt strange. He hadn't been part of her life for years, yet his return, and his death, had torn something open inside her. She missed his warmth, his laughter, his gentle way of reminding her to look at life with softness. And beneath it all, she missed the version of her marriage that once felt unbreakable. Michael kept his promise. He stepped down from his company and issued a public statement acknowledging Daniel's role in its founding. He didn't mention his father or the forged documents, but he made sure Daniel's name was restored. When the statement went live, it made headlines. Some praised his honesty, others questioned his timing. But for Emma, the real impact wasn't in what people said. It was in watching Michael finally face what he'd spent a decade running from. Still, she couldn't decide if that act was enough. One chilly evening, a week after the announcement, Michael came into the living room while Emma was sorting through old photos. He hesitated before speaking. "I found something of Daniel's. It was in the box from his lawyer." He handed her a small USB drive. Emma looked up, confused. "What's on it?" "I don't know, but it's labeled, 'For Emma.'" Her chest tightened. She walked to the computer, plugged it in, and waited as the screen lit up. There was only one file, a video. When she opened it, Daniel's face appeared on the screen. He was sitting by a window, sunlight spilling across his shoulder. He looked tired but calm, his voice steady. "Hey, Emma," he began softly. "If you're seeing this, it means I couldn't tell you everything in person. There's something I need you to know, not about business, not about the past, but about what really mattered to me." He paused, taking a breath. "For years, I thought what Michael did ruined me. But the truth is, I let bitterness keep me from living. I blamed him because it was easier than facing my own mistakes. I should have fought back, but instead, I ran. His eyes lifted toward the camera. I forgave him long before I saw him again. I just didn't know how to tell him. Or you. Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Daniel smiled faintly. You were always the light between us, the one who made things feel simple, good. I hope you and Michael find your way back to that light. Not because I think you owe him forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. Both of you. He leaned closer, his voice soft. Please don't carry what I carried. Let it go, Emma. Start over. Live. The video ended. Emma sat there in silence for a long time, the glow of the screen fading into black. Later that night, she stepped outside. The sky was clear, scattered with stars. She thought of Daniel's words, his quiet grace even in the face of pain. When Michael came out to join her, he stood beside her without speaking. For the first time in weeks, it didn't feel like a wall stood between them. I saw the video, he said quietly. Emma nodded. He forgave you. Michael's voice cracked. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, she said softly. But forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about freeing yourself. He turned to her, eyes searching. Do you think we could start again? Emma looked out toward the horizon, where the moonlight shimmered across the trees. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, Maybe, but it has to be honest this time. No more secrets. Michael nodded. No more secrets. The next day, Emma visited Daniel's grave. She brought a single white rose and the music box he had given her. She placed it beside the headstone and wound it once. The soft tune drifted through the crisp morning air, the same melody that once filled her home with comfort. She knelt, whispering, Thank you for giving me the truth and the strength to forgive. For the first time in months, the heaviness in her chest began to lift. Months later, life slowly found a rhythm again. Michael started teaching business, ethics part-time at a community college, determined to use his mistakes to guide others. He came home earlier, smiled more, and no longer carried that restless edge in his voice. Emma reopened her art studio, something she'd abandoned years before. Her paintings changed too. Softer colors, open skies, quiet landscapes filled with light. One of them, a scene of the lake where she last spoke to Daniel, she titled Return. When she hung it in a local gallery, she didn't write her full name. Just E.H. It wasn't for recognition. It was for release. One evening, as she and Michael sat watching the sunset, he reached over and took her hand. I know we can't undo what happened, he said. But I'm grateful you stayed. Emma smiled faintly. I didn't stay for what we were. I stayed for what we could become. He nodded, understanding. The last of the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt something simple and beautiful, peace. That night, she opened her journal again and wrote, Some people return to remind us of what we lost. Others return to show us what we still have. Daniel came back for both. She closed the book, placed it beside the music box, and let its soft melody fill the room once more. It wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning born from truth, forgiveness, and love that refused to die, even after goodbye.